This is the perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah. Another myth bites the dust.
Today's podcast is brought to you by TPR Live. That's right, the Perfect RA. Micah and myself will be joining you live and in person in Phoenix, Arizona on September 25th, where we will be helping you with all things related to fees, how much to charge your clients, how to adjust your fees, how to explain fees to your prospects, and of course, the extreme accountability around how to make that actually happen. So go to theperfectria.com/live to get signed up and get all those important details. Alrighty, back to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today, special guest Kelly Clements. Kelly is an author extraordinaire, a coach, all things magical. I actually came across Kelly by accident. I was at the Genius Network annual event, and if you've ever been to the Genius Network, they have a library of sorts where there's all these books, dozens of books, and you can just take them. And there was a book I'm holding up here, Grow Your Business Without Growing Apart. And I thought, well, that sounds like a cute book. You know, I'll grab it and I'll read it on the airplane ride home. And ladies and gentlemen, as I read through this, I thought perhaps that Kelly had a recording device in my home because there was so many lines in here that I had spoken. In fact, when my wife Jackie read the book, she said, I've already heard you say all these things. I don't need it in a book. So with that introduction, Kelly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Well, take just a minute, Kelly, and share with our audience how you have been kind of on both sides, and maybe we'll call like the stereotypical like entrepreneur spouse or partner relationship. You've been the entrepreneur and you've also been partners with the entrepreneur. Give us a little background on that.
Sure. So it started actually way back in 2004. I was a newlywed. I had just gotten married and I collided headfirst with my purpose, which was coaching. And this happened at the Strategic Coach. I was sitting in the back of the workshop rooms. My role was to help the Strategic Coach clients integrate the tools and concepts from their workshops into their business back home. I was behind closed doors with entrepreneurs from all over the world, and I saw really, really immediately how closely there was a correlation between a really healthy marriage and a thriving, successful business versus my clients who either had marital strife, were single, or didn't really count their marriage or their spouse as the greatest asset. And they were always up on that ceiling of complexity. So I thought, we've got the secret sauce. And so every day after work, I'd go home and talk to my husband and say, we should start this business together. It would be so great. And every day I came home with new ideas, new possibilities. And one day, after many, many years of me doing this, he finally looked at me and said, Kelly, why do you always need more? Why can't this just be enough? And that's when I really knew that our marriage was getting swallowed up by the ambition gap. And ultimately, our marriage would end in divorce. And so in my next relationship, I went for the polar opposite, somebody who was equally driven, equally ambitious, equally weird. And in the beginning, it was amazing. We both understood each other. We pushed each other to be better and better and better. But in romantic relationships, at some point, someone's got to give, someone's got to yield. And over time, that became me. And I really lost myself. And one day he looked at me, he said, what happened to Kelly? What happened to the woman I fell in love with that could light up any room? And I was like, I'm laying on the floor waiting for the crumbs of your attention to fall. Like, I'm not just a doll you can take on and off the shelf. And that's when I realized how much of myself I had lost in the gravitational pull of him and his business. And it also clued me into why some of my clients were back at Strategic Coach were having such a hard time integrating, because the spouse was like, screw you. Like, you're putting so much time and energy on growing the business. We need to build our muscles in the marriage. And so it really helped me take everything that I had learned in the coaching industry, helping business owners, and find ways to apply it to the couple. And so that they were growing together.
That's incredible to see. I've got to be in a very small group of people that have been on both sides of this dynamic, which obviously gives you a lot of interesting perspectives. So Kelly, you mentioned briefly the ambition gap, and I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit more, especially as it relates. So a lot of the listeners are a podcast, right? We always talk about having a healthy work-life balance, right? Spending a lot of time with your family. But this time with family isn't necessarily the solution to the ambition gap. Like, you probably know more than I do, but I meet advisors all the time. Hey, I just took this trip with my family and I was kind of a jerk the whole time because we weren't getting work done or whatever the case may be. Talk to us about all of that. Like, I guess I could just give you 10 things at once.
You're exactly right. Spending more time with family, if you're not on the same page, can actually feel like a curse. And it's one of the things that I talk about a lot because entrepreneurs tend to gravitate towards the office, not only because they're in the productivity mode and they're getting things done, but there's just more oxygen for them there. They're the hero there. The clients love them. The team members love them. It's, they get to be the hero there. They're getting to use their skills and abilities. They hit flow state, which is a huge dopamine rush because they're getting great results with little effort. And so when they're back at home, if they hit boredom, if they hit like entrepreneurs are problem solvers, they can solve problems really easy in their business. Then they get home and it's like there's problem, there's stress, there's upset. And it's like, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know what to do here. I'm bored here. My mind is racing 1,000 miles an hour here. I want to go back to work. And so it exacerbates that ambition gap. It leaves spouses or family feeling like business gets the best of you. I get the rest of you. And so the anecdote here is really when you're at home spending more time with family is to make it super enjoyable. And I always encourage a high degree of play because play actually duplicates flow state, but it adds the kick of oxytocin as well, which is a love hormone, which helps couples bond. It reduces stress. It keeps the monkey mind away so couples are engaged together. So having shared activities at home is super important so that the entrepreneur doesn't feel like they just want to go back to business because it's more fun there.
Kelly, talk to us a little bit more about this play. So this isn't like play as in let's organize the closet together or let's mow the lawn together or let's paint the house or whatever entrepreneurial brain thing. Let's start another company together. Like you're talking like go out and play pickleball together or go out and just have fun.
Yeah, it's pickleball. Sometimes it's just let's take the dog for a walk. It's let's be in action motion together. Let's be in the world. Stephen Kotler, who is the expert on flow, talks about some of the ingredients that lead to flow state, which is like an outdoor novel environment, places where you can lose track of time. There's a goal, but it's not like you're working towards something, but you don't necessarily there's not massive failure if you don't achieve it. It's, it's being out in the world, working on something together. I will say that it might be organizing a closet or gardening because again, that helps the family feel like you're putting your life force.
Oh, sure.
Back into the family.
Interesting.
Like we see so much of the energy and the time and attention and intention that goes into building a business and serving clients. And a lot of times spouses will see that and be like, I know you can do it. I see you thinking about marketing gifts or referral gifts. Like, why can't you do that here? And so when some of that life force or intentionality goes back into the family in the form of organizing closets or gardening, that can help the spouse feel like they're getting some of your gifts.
Interesting.
And a lot of times that's a touchy subject because it's like, we can write a check for this. Entrepreneurs are master delegators. Like, why would we spend our time and energy here? Sometimes if neither person likes doing those activities, that's a valid argument. And yes, you should delegate those things. However, if it's something that one person loves or enjoys and they get energy from it, we can count it play. So gardening could be a huge play activity for one person. It might not be your favorite way to spend a day, but if you're next to your partner, like getting dirty and you can treat it as a fun project, it could serve as a bonding opportunity.
Totally could. No, that's super. And of course, your book talks about this in great detail. And again, I joked about that in the intro. Again, the number of things like you just mentioned about, I can delegate that. Why are we talking about really anything around the house? I can delegate all that. Kelly, something you mentioned a little bit ago was your family being your greatest asset, your family, your spouse, your partner, but you're not using that in like some sort of cliched, like, hey, the most important thing to me in the world is my family, like these sort of throwaway tropes. Like you were talking like literally an entrepreneur's greatest asset in his or her ability to make money, to grow enterprises is in fact being in a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. I believe especially a supportive wife is a multiplier. Women are multipliers, period. Give them ingredients, they make a meal. Give them a house, they make a home. Give them seed, they make a baby. Women are multipliers. And if you have a fulfilled, lit up, happy, supportive spouse at home, no matter what you do, she is helping you multiply it. And I have seen this time and time and time again. It translates into increased confidence for the entrepreneur to come home, to rejuvenate, to get that hit of affirmation and support and encouragement at home, and then go back out into the world. And so when I see an entrepreneur that can come home to a supportive spouse who is non-judgmental, super encouraging, it brings a whole level of clarity that even I as a coach who knows intimately how to support entrepreneurs in their business, it can't touch what a supportive spouse can do for them. Because you've got two sets of eyes, two hands, two ears, like looking at this. You've got her intuition, you've got your skill and her intuition, her perspective. Like it is an unfair advantage.
So, Kelly, how does that contrast with, I don't want to confess myself on this podcast because people do listen to it. How does this contrast to like viewing your spouse as basically like an employee, like where you almost have performance measurements and you're seeing the cleanliness of the house and whatever we're measuring, almost like having performance evaluations, right? And again, maybe I'm the only one confessing to this, though your book makes it sound like a lot of us fall into that trap.
It is so common, and so many spouses tell me, like, I feel like I'm one of his employees. And this is where I say that the traits that make entrepreneurs successful in business are the exact same traits that are super challenging at home.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a clear distinction. When we treat our team members like employees, we miss the best parts of them. We miss the intimacy. Intimacy is intimacy. And so when we're only measuring their performance metrics, we are missing all of the other emotionality that goes into this that really cements the bond of a home. And women are creative. We like to create in the mess. This is man-woman brain. So
Sure.
If men are looking at productivity metrics, that you could think of that as a waffle, like very organized. It's a grid, it's rigid. Women have our brains look like a plate of spaghetti, like it's all intertwined. We have huge context on everything. We're considering all of the emotional components with the logic. And if you're only measuring their productivity, you're losing all of their magic that goes along with that. And productivity needs a reset, whether it's a car or nature, like there needs to be expansion and contraction. And so if you're only in production mode, there's never a reset. So by measuring production of a spouse, it's like you're managing all of her magic away.
Interesting. So by measuring this performance, of course, I guess you also end up with this treadmill of or hamster wheel of performance, and then you don't actually end up getting anywhere. Something, Kelly, you mentioned in your book, you had this phrase about, and I'm not going to get it quite right, the brightest lights have the darkest shadows. So, and you kind of alluded to that a minute ago, the things that can make us really successful entrepreneurs don't apply the same way in the home.
Yeah. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs go out and they create a lot of opportunity. They create a lot of resources, and they are able to provide a lifestyle for their spouse that, maybe not everybody in their community can really appreciate or relate to.
Yeah.
And so there becomes a belief of, I've created this great lifestyle. We should have no problems. What are you upset about?
Mm-hmm.
And then every time there's an emotional disconnect, the spouse feels lonely. She feels like you're this great bright light out in public and everybody sees this really successful entrepreneur, but you come home and you don't talk to me, or you shut yourself away, or I get all of your anger, or all of your confusion turns into like you just shut down, and when you don't know how to fix it, I get nothing. And so that's the shadow side, is that when entrepreneurs don't know how to manage things that don't fit in a productivity schedule, they do shut down because they're problem solvers. And that's where I'm saying the power of a spouse who can sit and love you and help you manage through those emotions or those conversations automatically makes you a better leader. And I do want to say a little bit, this ties back to the last question you asked about managing the productivity.
Yeah.
A lot of spouses have goals and they are driven. However, when they feel like they can't hit the metrics that their husband or the driven spouse sets for them, they shut down. Because it's like, I do have this really great hobby or this really great passion and I would like to do it. But if I don't monetize it, it's not going to be supported. And so I'm not going to tell him anything that I want. I'm not going to share with him any of my goals, because he is going to see a certain way that I have to do it. And it's never going to be good enough. So I'm just going to lock it away. And again, there's another data point on intimacy that totally gets left out of the relationship because she's not sharing her dreams and goals with her partner.
And those are great. So then what I was going to ask on that, so you talk in your book about the unhealthy alpha, right? So you talk about the healthy alpha is what drives really successful entrepreneurs, but the unhealthy. And so I was just thinking, some of the things you just mentioned seem like there's symptoms that we can recognize in ourselves. So I guess if your partner's not sharing, and we'll just use stereotypical gender roles here, if she's not sharing her goals or dreams with you, then that's a symptom. If you're always in productive mode and not play mode, that seems to be a symptom. What are other ways that we can kind of self-identify, wait a second, I'm in this unhealthy alpha? Because it doesn't feel in the moment like unhealthy alpha. It feels like I'm just getting done, right?
Yep. So when I talk about unhealthy alpha, that's part of a spectrum. Most entrepreneurs are alpha, and there are some entrepreneurs that are healthy alpha, and they're concerned with self-preservation, but they're also concerned with best for the tribe. And they're taking in all the data points to make sure that they're making a good decision for the entire group. Unhealthy alpha, besides just knowing that you're always in production mode, one of the most telltale parts is the Machiavellianism. And what that means is somebody just kind of nudged my shoulder. So now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to annihilate them. If anybody gets in the way, if anybody starts, there's any threat to our forward motion, I'm going to annihilate that threat. What that does is puts everybody around you on eggshells, and people cannot produce when they're in survival mode. So if you identify with this, most entrepreneurs do. Most entrepreneurs identify with the instinct to annihilate anybody who becomes some kind of threat or obstacle to them. There's a very good chance that everybody around you is in survival mode. When you can shift towards that healthy end of the alpha spectrum and understand that not everything is a threat, the people around you, their nervous system settle down, their creativity starts to improve, they start to be more solution focused. So now the whole tribe is looking out for opportunities for growth and dangers to eliminate. Versus when you're on the unhealthy side of the spectrum, it's only you and everybody around you is a threat. So everybody around you stays really, really small. They're only looking to what's the nearest threat I need to eliminate. They're not thinking about new opportunities. They're not bringing ideas to the table. They're not bringing solutions to the table. They're only problem focused because they're in survival mode.
Yeah, trying to survive from the entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Wow. We don't have a whole ton of time left, unfortunately, but talk to us a little bit. This is a framework that you gave my wife, Jackie, and I, as we've been doing work together, which we'll talk about your work in just a minute. But you gave me this lens, and I would love to hear you talk more about it because it was so impactful for me, which was breadcrumbs of the muse. So for longtime listeners of the podcast, I know this will shock you. I can be quite meticulous about certain things. Some people would call it anal, is I think another word. So things like doors not being shut all the way, or crumbs, or dirty door handles. And back response where it's like, man, I would see like a door not closed all the way, and I would lose my mind. Like, what is going on here? Do we have no professionalism here? Like, what's going on? And then you told me in a conversation, hey, Jarvis, this is just breadcrumbs to the muse. Like, that just means that your muse, that my wife, Jackie, is somewhere nearby. And even yesterday, I was walking past her closet. Maybe this is TMI for everybody. And I swear that she can't close any drawer fully. No drawer can ever be closed fully by Jackie. Wonderful person. So I just take a minute. I'm like, oh, no worries. I'm going to close these because it means that the muse is nearby. And I just gently close all those and I smile and off I go. So tell us about that. And did I get it way off? I guess you're going to be like, Jarvis, you're getting this all wrong. Actually, I never would have said that. You're a nutcase.
You're exactly right. There is a broader perspective though. It's not only that she's near, it's that she is like not in the eggshell of like scanning the environment of what's wrong. What did I leave out? Like I have to scour all of this, or she's just scanning for like, what's the thing that's going to set you off? Instead, she's like, she's relaxed. There's a drawer open and she's not obsessing over what's going to make you mad. She's not doing it to, to make you angry.
No,
she's just relaxed. She's not in fear, which means when you get to her, she's going to be relaxed. She's going to be laughing. She's going to tell you a funny story for the day. She's going to be interested in what happened to you, not standing there in fear of like looking over out the corner of her eye, like what could he possibly be mad about? So the open drawers, the towels out of the drawer, anything that like driven you nuts before is now an indicator she's in her pleasure center. She's ready to have fun. She's relaxed, which means you're going to get an exponentially better version of your muse, not the one that's like scared to death that she's going to say something wrong or something's going to upset, and the environment is going to upset you.
Like I said, when you first mentioned that to me, it didn't resonate, but when I played with it a little bit, it sure makes a big difference, right? And this shift from just purely productivity focused to what are we solving for? Kelly, tell us a little bit about how people can learn more about your work. I know you have a class. I know you do coaching. Obviously, I know that firsthand. You've got, of course, your book, which is available on Amazon, Grow Your Business Without Growing Apart. Definitely a must read. If you read it and it sounds like it's in my voice, it's because we're all on the same page.
Thank you. Yes, I do have the book. I have an online course, which we can add to the show notes.
Perfect.
And I do one-on-one coaching. People can learn more about that at my website, kellyclements.com.
I love that. Kelly, any other parting thoughts for our listeners, for entrepreneurs in general, other key takeaways?
Yeah, I think the time has come. I think there's a lot of energy going into entrepreneurial couples. I hear the term power couples a lot. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs assume that means they need to make their spouse or their wife an entrepreneur with them or somehow integrate them into the business. That is not what's up. And I think the new dawn is coming on really how to empower your spouse, whether he or she is or isn't an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter. You can have that power couple dynamic regardless of what your spouse does for a living or if they leave the house. Power couple is when you have two happy, healthy people creating one happy, healthy relationship. And so that looks different for every couple. And that really is my call to action, is to really help people understand what that version of happy and healthy looks like for the individuals so that they can create that power couple dynamic together.
I love it. And Kelly, while your work is specifically between couples, it seems like this all applied to parent-child relationships as well, right? Because I've noticed a dynamic shifting around our house as we sort of embrace these things with my 18-year-old daughter, but this is really kind of true in all relationships, obviously exponentially so in an intimate relationship, but even in a parent-child relationship, it seems.
Absolutely. Yep. A lot of my clients that have older children will come into, sometimes we've done couples calls, whether we're doing a Colby call with the youth, just some of the broader concepts, but they absolutely apply to children as well, and neighbors and friends and
well, that's true.
Your own parents.
Sure. And you mentioned a few minutes ago, it applies to how you're treating your team members, right? If they're, like you said, if they're in a defensive mode, a survival mode, you're not getting the best out of anyone.
Exactly.
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for all of your work. Again, for all of our listeners, in the show notes will be a link to Kelly's online class, which I highly recommend. Of course, definitely get her book, Grow Your Business Without Growing Apart, available on Amazon and in the Genius Network library if you're at the Genius Network events. So Kelly, thanks you so much. For our listeners, until next time, happy planning. Hey, before you leave, a quick word from our sponsors. Hey, everybody, I want you to take a quick look around your office, and on your desk, there should be the Retirement Tax Services Desktop Tax Guide. And if it's not there, or if it's not current, meaning you didn't download it in the last month, go to retirementtaxservices.com and download the Desktop Tax Guide. This is a must-have resource for every financial advisor committed to tax planning.
Before we go, something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and